One thing that I truly believe is that, we need people to make pigs, obviously. And it's the people in the barn each day that make the difference in how productive the farm is, but also the overall attitude on the farm. How, when people are working in the barn, whether they go home and appreciate their job at the end of the day. And I think that attitude translates into more effective production. We're going to talk a little bit about that and how to cultivate an attitude, a positive attitude on the farm. We're going to give a term to it. So, employee attitude can drastically impact productivity on the farm. How many of you have ever had an experience where your attitude about something maybe changed how you acted in the situation? Anyone? Yes, absolutely. Let me give you something that happened to me not so recently, but always sticks in my mind as a good example of this. I had never learned how to ski in my life, and I played basketball and in high school and undergrad, and it was always against the rules to go skiing, so I never had that opportunity to learn. And so one winter I went to visit my boyfriend, who's now my husband, out in Seattle, and he says, I'm going to teach you how to ski. I said, oh, that'd be awesome. I've always wanted to learn. So we went out to this beautiful mountain range, and it was just lovely. And he said, they have these lessons, but you're an athlete. It's no big deal. You don't need to do the lessons. I'll teach you how. So, we went on the bunny slope for a little bit, and he said, turn this way, and when you want to stop, put it together. It's like, okay, great. I feel pretty good about this. I can handle this. So he says, okay, I think we're ready to go up on the slope. So we got on the ski lift and went on up, and by accident, we got on a black diamond slope. And so we were getting close to the end of the ski lift, and I could see that you had to know how to ski to get off the ski lift. I mean, it was like straight down. I was seeing what I was going to have to do, and I was starting to quake. I thought, what'd you get me into? And sure enough, as we got off the ski lift, I tried to stay upwards as we were headed down, but I totally wiped out, and I blocked the way for the rest of the skiers coming down, and they're like, woman down, head this way. And so they were routing people around me. And then, once I got to the place I had to start on this black diamond slope to get down, there was no way I had any of the skills necessary to go down this slope. And so it was crash. And finally I gave up. I just started scooting down the slope on my bottom, crying. It was just a bad experience. You can imagine my terror when I got invited 5-10 years ago to go give a talk at Pig Ski. I thought, oh no, not only am I supposed to give a talk here, but I bet they want me to ski as well. Interesting, I went to a lesson, and the lady had us all in a circle, and she said, okay, tell me about your past experiences with skiing. And I seriously was almost shaking because I had such a bad experience the first time. And I said, well, my husband, she says, oh, you're in that group. And seriously, there's a group of ladies and men whose spouses had tried to teach them how to ski. And so there was a special group just for us over here. And she took her time and explained exactly what to do, took us step by step through everything, gave us confidence, brought us slowly from the bunny slope to the next slope to the next slope until we really started to feel good about ourselves. She complimented us. She said, oh, look at you guys, you're naturals. We started to feel pretty good about ourselves. And then she'd move us up. And it was gradual. And it was positive. And we acquired a skill. At the end of the day, it was snowing softly, and we were skiing down in a group, in a line, down a hill all together. No one fell. And we had a wonderful experience. I wanted to go back and ski again. 80% of first-time skiers never come back. They have such a bad experience that they go in there and they decide, this is not for me. They have a poor teacher, they're pushed beyond their level, they have no training. I think I had all of those in my first experience. We do that to people in swine barns, don't we? We bring them in and we expect them to know how to do things that they've never experienced before. They may never have been on a farm. So we're creating a situation sometimes, just like I felt that first time that I tried to ski, where I knew that first day I didn't want to come back. So how do we change that? So what has the biggest impact on employee attitude? And I think it's these two components. If we're going to zero in on two things that we really need to focus on in the swine industry. Number one, employee engagement, and number two, communication. So the first thing we're going to talk today about is employee engagement. How to measure that on a farm, and what that means when you do measure it and you have it. So what is employee engagement? At AASV 2009, Dr. Larry Firkins gave a talk where he challenged us in the swine industry to do a better job at working with employees. And he defined employee engagement as follows. He said it's the ability to capture the heads and hearts of your employees to instill an intrinsic desire and passion for excellence. He said that employee engagement is when an employee wants their organization to succeed because they feel connected emotionally and socially to its mission, vision, and purpose. That's the definition of employee engagement. How do we create that? This is industry-wide. This is an industry-wide statistics here. In 2000, 26% of workers were engaged. 2002, 31% of workers were engaged. And 2005, 28% of workers were engaged. Here's the value of engaged employees when it's measured across all industries. 27% lower absenteeism, 31% less likely to leave the organization, 62% reduction in work-related accidents, 18% more productive, 12% more profitable. And in hospitals, and this is what gets me, when they measure employee engagement in our nurses and doctors, we have 21% lower avoidable deaths if your doctor or your nurse is engaged. I want an engaged doctor. I don't know about you. This is important. So let's think about this a little bit. This all goes into employee engagement, but it's something that we want to think about here. Did you know that when they survey across all industries, that 15% of employees are being called by a name that they don't prefer? How does that make them feel? And 39% can provide a clear answer on knowing what they get paid to do. They cannot provide a clear answer on knowing what they get paid to do. That's a lack of mission delivery. There is a huge benefit of tapping into what people are passionate about. And that becomes a source of energy in an industry. How do we create that in the swine industry? So do you know what your employees count as a success? And have you celebrated those successes? I think this is a key point to think about. In a recent presentation I went to put on by Gallup, they talked about and engaged how to reach people in a way that is special to them and how much that means to that individual. And they told this story. They said there was a large company that had a sales team, and there was one sales team member that every year was the top salesman. And every year he received the award for being the top salesman at their annual meeting, and they'd bring him up to the front of the room, give him the award, everyone would applaud, and he'd leave. And go out and the next year and be the top salesman. Well, the 10th year in a row, he was going to get this award. And when they called him up to the podium, he was dressed in shorts and a t-shirt at what is typically a suit and tie event. And he went up, grabbed the award, said some profanity, and walked off the stage. I mean, really, the CEO probably could have fired him for what he did and what he said. But he sat back and he thought and he said, okay, something's wrong. This is my best guy. He's upset because, why is he upset? And he thought, I didn't reach him. I didn't provide him a reward in a way that meant something to him. One of the things they say about employee engagement is that a person needs to receive some sort of praise or recognition for what they do approximately every 7 days to maintain their engagement. And it's not necessarily that they need to receive a uniform, okay, everyone, good job this week. That was 7 days, check. It's not that. It's that praise is deserved, timely, and unique to that person. That it means something to them. So what that CEO did is he stepped back and he said, how can I better reach that salesperson in a way that means something to him? And he thought, now what's the most important thing in John's life? Well, his family. And really, when I think about it, he's a pretty private guy. And we just gave him 10 years in a row, a big award in front of everyone. How can I best reach him? And so he called his wife and arranged to pay for a family portrait. And so he didn't know about it. His wife took him and had the family portrait made. And then he called him into the office with a private meeting with some of the people who he cared about the most in the organization. And he sat him down and he said, you know, John, I just wanted to take the time to personally thank you for all that you've done for this company. It really means a lot for me. As a token of my appreciation, I wanted to give you this family portrait. He then unveiled a beautifully framed family portrait, and his family came in and gave him a hug and said, we're proud of you, Dad. And he started crying. And he says, I didn't realize how much you appreciated what I do day in, day out. Thank you. And he went on to be the best salesman all the time. We have to figure out how to reach people as individuals. Every 7 days, good job doesn't do it. We have to figure out how to reach people in a way that is meaningful to them. People are our greatest asset. You know, a lot of companies use this line, but I think few understand what it means. So do we believe that our ordinary employees can be the source of extraordinary results? I've seen it happen. Yes. But have you communicated this? And have you made a plan to motivate that workforce over time? I think that securing our future as a swine industry is going to require innovation on our part and on the part of our employees, and we need to promote that. So how do we measure it? How do we measure employee engagement on a farm? Gallup developed a survey to do this. It's designed to assess employee engagement, and it aids in the management of employees. The survey is known as Q12. I have the book that talks about it in here. I think I said it on the podium. It's called 12. It's 12, the elements of great managing, and it's written by Gallup. They interviewed over 2 million employees across all industries to figure out how to measure employee engagement. This is a powerful tool. It asks 12 questions related to the aspects of employee engagement, and the book takes these 12 questions and gives you suggestions on how to create employee engagement. And it's been used very successfully in other industries, and I think we need to be using it consistently in ours. Here's the 12 survey questions out of 3,000 questions that they asked. These were the ones that were statistically significant in relation to engaged employees. 1, I know what is expected of me at work. That was number 1. Realize when I read these are in order of importance as well. 2, I have the materials and equipment. I need to do my work right. And 3, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. Here's that praise or recognition one. In the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing good work. And that's just not false recognition or praise. It's timely, personalized recognition or praise. My supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person. There is someone at work who encourages my development, and at work, my opinions seem to count. Number 8, the mission or purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important. My associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. Number 10, I have a best friend at work. When Gallup was giving this presentation to us, that's one that everyone kind of stuck back and said, I have a best friend at work. How does that correlate to engagement? They said, we don't know. This one was statistically significant with engaged employees. If they said they had a best friend at work, they were engaged. He said, we asked it different ways. We asked it, I have a friend at work, or I have a good friend at work. The only one that was statistically significant was when they asked it in a way that said, I have a best friend at work. 11, in the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. The last 6 months. So if you think that they tailored the word best a lot, all these time increments they've also tested, including the 7. They said 14 was not statistically significant. 3 wasn't either. 7 was, for whatever reason. And this last year, I've had opportunities at work to learn and grow. So this is a survey you can give your employees on a quarterly basis and get your farm's Q12 score, or your ranking of where your farm is on employee engagement. And we've done this a little bit in the swine industry. Each question is answered on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is strong disagreement, 5 is strong agreement. And the questions reflect aspects of employee engagement described in that book that I just talked about, 12. So we designed a preliminary investigation into possible correlations between employee engagement and easily defined production parameters. The parameters that we used were pigs per sow per year, pre-weaning mortality and stillborn rate, and farrow rate. And we took a segment of the swine industry and administered this Q12 survey across and tried to see if it was statistically correlated, if these questions were the same as other industries, that they were more highly productive industry. And our results indicated that there was a statistically significant or positive correlation between pigs per sow per year and overall employee engagement as determined by the survey results. The individual parameters, the smaller parameters, were not as correlated, but when we looked at, in general, how the whole farm was performing, pigs per sow per year, yes. The farms where the employees were engaged were more productive. What's our take-home message? Employee engagement is as valid in the swine industry as other industries. And as an industry and as industry leaders, we should be measuring and working to improve employee engagement as a means to improve production. This is important. I strongly recommend you read the book 12 and that you implement this in your own system. I think it's a great thing to do quarterly on a farm. An employee engagement survey where you look at your Q12 score, your average score over time, and see where we can improve. The folks at Gallup have recommended that you continue to work at something that you're really good at in employee engagement, because we're more likely to improve our strengths than we are our weaknesses. But at the same time, to look at maybe a factor of employee engagement that we're not good at and work on one at a time, and work slowly to improve your Q12 score on your farm over time. So attitude and communication. How many people think you're a good communicator? Do you think that skill is natural, or is it something that's learned? Learned. Yeah. And so do you think it's something we can teach? I think so too. So in the swine industry, what does good communication look like? And this is something that I think a lot of people have thought a lot about. And these are the top 3 things, and realize this is my opinion. But number 1, I think we need to work on flexing to behavioral style. And what do I mean by that? What's the adage that we all know? Do unto others as you want them to do unto you, right? But how you really reach people is if you do unto them as they want to be done unto. So we need to be thinking about how that person wants to best receive information, not about how we want information to be received. How do I like information? Bulleted, short. Tell me what it is in a concise manner. How does my husband want information? He wants a long, detailed explanation that builds it up from the bottom all the way to the top and rounds it up into one summary. I'm like, oh Lord, get to the point. Someone's going to reach me better if they come in and give me the summary. For my husband, if that person doesn't come in and build it up from the bottom to the top, what is that? That's the principles taught in DISC and a lot of those other programs. DISC is the program where they give you a strong, dominant behavioral style, either a D, I, S, or a C. There's other programs where they give you colors. There's another one where they tell you you're a mouth, a jerk, a wimp, or a whatever. But they're all basically the same. There's the D is that dominant behavioral style that likes to take charge, assume risks. The I is the social person, the one who's really concerned about everyone in the room, willing to please, motivated by pleasing. The S is this steady person who wants to maybe think about things a little bit before they absorb it. But once they buy into something, they're going to be a strong performer, a consistent performer. But they're the ones, if you ask them to do something, you may not get a yes sir, no problem. They may say, And that may be the only response you get. And for those D's in the room, they're like, yes or no, tell me whether you're going to do it. But for that S, they just need more time. And that D behavioral style is going to better reach that S if they respect how that S wants to be communicated to. Explain how. The C is my husband, the detail person, the person who really wants to know why before they're ready to take action. These are motivational factors. And if we don't communicate in a way that we motivate people, then we're going to get inaction when we want action. Flexing to employment tier. And in the swine industry, I think this is crucial. Clearly, there's a chain of command on almost every farm. And if there isn't, then there's people doing jobs wrong or inappropriately, or people just don't know what their roles are. You have the manager. You have the department head 1. You have the techs. You have the service manager. You have some upper management or an owner. And there's a chain of command, and you have to respect that, or you upset people. And different levels of that chain of command want to be communicated in a different way. The owner is going to want information presented to him very differently than that caregiver, the person on the ground in the barn every day. And we have to figure out how to flex to that employment tier to effectively reach that tier. And so that leads to the summary point is that we need to know how to use operational drivers. By operational drivers, I mean things like average daily gain, feed conversion. On the sow farm, the parameters that you're looking at day in, day out, pigs per sow per year. We need to know how to use those operational drivers as motivational factors across the 4 tiers of employment. Upper management, veterinarian, service manager, caregiver. What drives those employment tiers to move? Because if you do it wrong, inaction occurs. And how do we train it? So in this next half hour, that's what I want to explore. So who is our audience? If we're an agent of change outside of a farm, outside of a system, how do we stimulate change? And let's say these are the 4 tiers that we might have the opportunity to deal with: the caregiver, the vet team, the owners or board, and the service manager. If we just go in and let's say we make a recommendation to the caregiver. You know, I think we need to start pigs better and feed pigs on the mat so that they get the pigs mat fed. The caregiver's like, oh yeah, I think that's a great idea. What is that service manager for that system going to say? He's going to be ticked. Because that information needs to come from him to the caregiver. If the caregiver is implementing things he randomly hears from the outside without going through the chain of command, who knows what else is going to be implemented that he or she does not want to happen on the farm. So as an agent of change, if I go into a system as a consultant and I talk to that caregiver direct, I've just made a lot of people upset because I've not respected that chain of command. And that's what's going to happen to my idea. It might have been the right thing to do, but because I delivered it wrong, my idea got squashed. I see that happen in our own management system, and you know we're not by any means perfect at doing this. But you know, even us vets, we'll go in and we'll be on a farm and we'll say, you know, I want you to cross foster better and find pigs in the 3 to 60 range better, but not realize that the service manager had them doing something for a reason, and we've gone in and undermined his authority in that system. That was the wrong way for us to go about it. Maybe I should have gone in there and watched and thought, I wonder why they're doing it this way. And then gone back to the service manager and said, hey, I noticed this on farm. Is there a reason why you were doing it? And then given them the opportunity to explain. And maybe there's an opportunity for change. But if I don't spread my message in another way across the rest of the system, then it's still probably not going to happen. And so somehow, if we have an opportunity to deliver information to those 4 tiers of employment, we have to deliver a similar message across all tiers. So that means we have to deliver a message that's tailored to those 4 tiers, and it has to be, but we have to hit everyone. Otherwise, someone is going to be undermined, and it's going to come down on top of us. But it has to respect that chain of command. So how we communicate is very important, and the right delivery to each employee tier matters. I think sometimes, and I've made this mistake too, I'll go in on a soapbox. And whether you're the caregiver in the barn or the owner, very oftentimes we go in on our own soapbox. We have something in our mind that we want to get across. And so we go in with my message. And we're going to deliver it to everyone, but this still happens. That idea doesn't go anywhere. And I think sometimes when that mistake is made, we haven't taken the time to get everyone bought into it so that it's our message, so that we're going into the system and convincing other people that this is something that we need to do. This is not my message. This is something I want to bring us along with as a team. So a couple simple concepts: tailoring our message to the individual, to the employment tier, and getting buy-in from everyone in the system to truly stimulate action that is long-lasting. And so this step 1, the process of making it our message, is really the first step of implementing the plan and the most important step of the plan. And without succeeding here, we become that flying elephant that's trying to make change, but really causing destruction along the way and making people mad, increasing our employee turnover, and making that person, when they go home, not feel like they were valued and appreciated at their job. So how do we train this? How do we train these skills so that we have people who are able to do this right in our industry? I think there are a couple of programs that have tried to take simple concepts and deliver it in a way that takes into account all this information. One is the individual pig certification event that Pfizer Animal Health is promoting. This is what they do. There's a simple concept that they want to get across: identify, quantify, communicate. So the goal that Pfizer has is to be a part of the step to create experts in individual pig care and to certify critical players and systems to be experts in individual pig care to make sure it occurs. So what they're doing is they want early identification and treatment of pigs, and wean to finish management is of high importance. So they want the people to be able to identify the pigs that need treatment, but then they want people to take what they're seeing and actually put a number to it. And I do this. I'll admit that this is definitely a flaw I had as a veterinarian. Is that I thought I could walk into a barn, wave a magic wand, and know the percent of pigs affected in the barn without counting. I thought, oh yeah, that sounds like about 15% of pigs are coughing in this barn. And I would make my plan of action based upon my magical assessment of the barn. And it's wrong. When I actually went in and counted and figured out how many pigs were actually affected, sometimes it was a lot less. It might have been 2%. That's a different action. And sometimes it was a lot more. And so one thing that we need to get people doing in the barn is not just identifying the pigs and creating an action plan, but quantifying, actually counting and putting a number to the system. So this program is working on identifying and quantifying and categorizing what they're seeing in the barn, giving a severity ranking to that pig, and then getting practice communicating it. So this is how it works. And this is a program that our company had worked very closely with Pfizer to develop. Here's the key aspects. The participants get the opportunity to quantify the number of pigs of each key symptom of the pig and compare their numbers with an industry expert. So this is kind of staged. What we often start the event by is a classroom session where we bring everyone in and we talk about flexing to behavioral style. We talk about DISC. The participants come into the room knowing what their dominant behavioral style is, and we deliver the message that it's more important to figure out what the guy sitting next to you, what his behavioral style is. So that, it's nice and all to know what you are, but what's more important is to recognize the behavioral style of the person next to you or the person that you have to influence so you know how to deliver your message. So we give them some tips on how to do that better. Then we talk about how to rank severity of pigs. And we have good pig people in the industry. The vast majority of people in the industry can find those pigs that need treatment. They may not be able to find them early enough, but we have some good pig people in the industry. And then during the day, we then take them out to the barn. The vets at the event have gone through and quantitatively evaluated the barn prior to the arrival of the class participants. Then the class participants have a group of pigs assigned to them, and they have to go in and count how many pigs they have in each symptom that they see. They then get to compare what they saw to the vet expert that counted the barn before them, and compare. See how closely their numbers match up. We give them a score on how close they were to what the vet was, how the vet evaluated the barn. They then have an opportunity to deliver what they saw in the barn to a variety of employment tiers. So here's how the ABCE pig assessment works. Early treatments are more successful treatments. And if we find pigs that are early, they're typically going to respond a lot more. It's estimated that 90% of pigs that we find in the A category are going to respond. B pigs are those pigs that have progressed a little bit more. Maybe their spine is showing. Maybe they've lost a little bit of weight. But they still are going to respond a high percentage of the time. We estimate about 50 to 75% of the time these B pigs are going to respond. The C pigs are the ones we're good at finding. Their spine is showing a little bit. They might be hacking a little bit. They might be borderline. We might be tempted to humanely euthanize them, but we give them a chance. But only 20 to 40% of those pigs actually respond. So we have to get people to find pigs early for best efficacy of our treatment. Because it's hard work to catch that pig and give it a treatment, whether it's sick or not. And so if we're going to put effort into this, be it in the farrowing house or in the wean to finish barn or in our sows, we need to find them early for better treatment efficacy. And the E-pigs are the ones that need to be humanely euthanized. And on some farms I walk through, and that's all I see that have been treated, are the pigs that are in that E category. And that's where we need to bring this message to the farm so that individual pig care is better done. It's our responsibility to get this done. So here's how the quantification works. We have symptoms that we want people to look for in a pen. So we have them walk through the pen and look for one symptom at a time over a small number of pigs. First we look for, say, the number of fallouts in the pen. Then we say, okay, now look for this symptom. Let's look for swollen joints. You know, a fallout pig might be a pig with swollen joints. We don't care. I want you to count the amount of symptoms you're seeing in the barn. And I want you to give it a severity ranking so that you're able to communicate to me, your vet, that I saw 3% C pigs. They were pretty far along that were exhibiting swollen joints in this barn. This is the chart that we have them use at this event, and so we just have them go through and just tally off what they're seeing, and it's done fairly quickly. It's just an exercise. Then we make them actually sit down and calculate what the percent was, and it's you know, when someone sits down and calculates the percent, it's often very different than what their impression is, and that in itself is a learning event. It's the other half of the sheet. They then look at what they've gathered, and they get to communicate. And that communication part of that event is a scored part of the process, where they get feedback on how well they flex to the employment tier and also flex to behavioral style. So we have the vets go in and we've coached them to say, in this communication, you're going to be a D behavioral style, and you're going to play an experienced vet. And that service manager or caregiver or whatever role they are in the industry has to then figure that out in a cold call sort of situation, how to best reach that person, how to best deliver what they saw in the barn to that person. So they get feedback on that. They also then deliver the information to caregivers. And we set it up, too, so that if their dominant behavioral style is an S, let's say, they'll have the opportunity to communicate outside their typical behavioral style. So they'll have the opportunity to communicate with an I, a D, and a C. And so the first caregiver they communicate with will, let's say, be a C, and they have to do the same thing. This time they're communicating to that person in a way that they want to stimulate action on the farm. And that caregiver gives them feedback. They score themselves to see how they think they communicated the information. And then that's me standing off to the side just sort of listening. And after that communication event, I fill out a form, too, that gives them feedback on how they did. How often do we get feedback on how we communicate? We get body language feedback. Sometimes we get verbal feedback. But do we really realize it? Do we realize that they're asking us to flex to their behavioral style? Sometimes we don't get it. Sometimes we have to set this up to help people realize how to better reach other people. This is a skill that's not natural. It feels funny for me to take the time to build a case from the bottom up to deliver that information. I mean, for God's sake, they should just do it if I ask them to do it, right? No, that's not how it works. People want to receive information in a way that's meaningful to them, not how I want information to be received. We have to teach people to think about that and figure it out. So they have that communication event. And we really want them to focus in on what DISC calls the platinum rule. Do unto others as they want done unto them. One thing that the Pfizer sales team often talks about during this event is how they try to incorporate this into their everyday life, in that they start thinking about, if I'm going to go visit this client, he's an I, So how am I going to best deliver this information in a way that's going to best reach that person's behavioral style? And so they share that information with folks at the event in the hopes that when these service managers or caregivers or owners are going to the farm, that they're thinking about, okay, I'm going to go visit this contract grower. Yep, he's he's a people person. He might want me, he's always been talking about how his son does great at baseball and how he's, working the community. I need to acknowledge that and let that person know how much I care about him so that I best reach them. And you know what, for that I? A motivational factor for that I is the desire to please. And so I'm going to communicate to that I in a way that lets them know what makes me happy. So I may say, John, I tell you what, I'm getting really positive feedback from the packer when we send this weight of hog in. They appreciate us as growers and providers to the system when we provide this weight of pig. You did that last time. I appreciate it. It makes us as a system look good. For that that's a motivational factor. They're thinking, I pleased. I was an effective part of the system. Whereas for that C, in the same scenario, if I'm thinking about how I'm going to best reach that person when I go to the farm, I might say, here's the deal. We need to hit this weight. When we hit this weight, we hit the optimal matrix on our kill sheet, and we get the most money back to the farm because. And here's how that looks. And I might bring the kill sheet out and show them the details of how the sort laws and how the weights and how the variation of the weights impacted the overall profitability to the farm. Boy, that C is going to really appreciate that. That's why getting this weight of animal on the truck makes the farm more money. That reaches them. And you know what's a motivational factor for that C? They often are achievers. And they want to know often how other people are doing. So they might say, you're in the top 5% of people hitting that weight. But, and we really appreciate that. That in itself may be a motivational factor. Well, why aren't I number one? And so that's a way to drive that person or drive that grower to fit what you want them to do. And Pfizer is really the group that is putting on this individual pig care certification event that, in my opinion, does a really nice job of putting those together. There's another course we've been working on where we're really trying to keep in mind flexing to employment tiers and flexing to behavioral styles, but really focusing in on operational drivers and really thinking about how do different tiers of the industry want operational drivers to be presented to them? And how can that be presented in a way that stimulates action? We're calling this building swine business acumen, using operational drivers as motivational factors across 4 tiers of employment in the swine industry. So these are the goals for this course. Goal number 1, understanding the swine business structure and having folks really realize what the swine business structure looks like. Number 2, really understanding what operational drivers are and how we need to be, we go into how to calculate operational drivers, how to calculate them correctly, that we cover the top mistakes when calculating operational drivers. Like, let's say we're doing a case study on our farm and we want to figure out how much it impacts average daily gain and feed conversion. So we go in and we cover the biggest mistakes that people make when they're trying to calculate these operational drivers, because you can do it wrong and you can misinterpret your information or overinterpret it. And so we cover that in great detail. And we practice calculating, and one thing we've often done is tailored this training event to whatever group we're talking to. So if we're talking to, say, a group of sales representatives, we might talk about how when their product is used in a system, if they do a case study on that system and they try to look at the operational drivers how that case study impacted the operational drivers, how that can be interpreted, whether or not what is the right information to pull from that. And if you have something, then how do you take that information and correctly communicate that to upper management, to a veterinarian, to a service manager, and to a caregiver? And how to take that impact of what you've done and communicate it in a way that it changes action in the system. And a sales representative is one example. But if you're a service manager in a system, you're still an agent of change, right? You still have your thoughts about things that you think you could do to make things better. How do you measure that? If you change something, how do you measure what that change meant? And how do you communicate it in a way that someone listens? That you've reached them? So that's our goal number 3, how to calculate it, and then how to use those operational drivers is 4. And then in this course, we also work to give people practice and feedback at using operational drivers as motivational factors for the 4 tiers of employment. Right now, this course is conceptual, and we've implemented it in a few tiers of employment. And our intention is to provide a series of learning on every other month basis, and that it's a 2-day course. To really get in and figure out how to calculate some of these things, you need to sit down with a pen or paper and calculator and work through it and talk through it. And we've been providing those opportunities. But the ultimate goal is to create more effective agents of change within the pork industry. So that when we have good ideas and we have a vision of how to make something better, that we're not a flying elephant going over, knocking people over, making people not want to be on our team. I mean, as an industry, we have a high employee turnover rate. And we have to figure out ways to make it better. So our department, we consider ourselves a group of professionals that understand animal agriculture and agribusiness. And we really have a passion for sharing that knowledge with others through the development and delivery of science-based creative learning tools. And we understand that measurements of progress and impact are the most important part of successful learning programs. I think the 2 courses that we talked about today are just examples of a way that you too can become instructional at teaching people how to be agents of change, and keeping in mind those key aspects of ways to do it. The other things that are out there, and this is another tool we also worked with Pfizer to create, is the Walking the Pens training CD that talks about finding pigs early on, and it is a nice tool. It's going to very likely be upgraded so that it's linked to a tracking system so that managers can go in and actually assign lessons to people and monitor those lessons over time and actual questions over time. So that if you're having a fallout problem in a particular barn and you want people to be able to find those A, B, C, and E pigs better, that you could actually go online and assign all your growers via email to take that lesson and monitor their progress over time. That's the 2.0 version. Right now, the 1.0 version is available. It just doesn't have that tracking with it, but that's coming. And then the other fun training tool that you can use in your system that I'd recommend you trying. It's a virtual Walking the Pens, and this is also something that we work to create. Oh shoot! Since we switched the presentation, it's not going to link. But it's basically a national competition, and it's a virtual world where you can go into a virtual pig barn and practice treating individual pigs in the barn, and you get a final score back based upon how your actions impacted the farm's profitability. And there's a different scenario every month, and you can register your own system and your own farm to have an internal competition to see who can get the best score. But what it does is it does reinforce that concept of finding pigs early, treating those pigs that are sick, and how your actions make a difference is is the ultimate learning tool associated with this. And so, with that, this is, I just want to encourage us as an industry to take seriously our role to influence people to be more engaged in what they do day in, day out in our industry, and also to communicate better. Because if we want them to appreciate the jobs that we have in the industry, I think these are two factors that we need to focus on.